The unspoken goodbye, a bold and beautiful tragedy. The Los Angeles sun, a relentless artist painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, seemed a cruel mockery of the turmoil brewing within Brooke Logan's heart. In the opulent quiet of her home, a gilded cage of her own making, she found no solace. The echoes of her latest clash with Ridge and his ever-judgmental daughter, Steffi, ricocheted through her mind, each word a sharp-edged stone thrown at her already bruised spirit. They questioned her judgment, her choices, her very essence. It was a familiar, painful dance, one she was weary of leading. She sighed, the sound of fragile whisper in the vast emptiness of her living room. A glass of wine, a fleeting comfort, was her only companion. As she reached for it on the polished coffee table, a glint of something out of place caught her eye. It was a manila envelope, tucked away on the edge of the kitchen counter, its unassuming presence a stark contrast to the drama that usually unfolded in this house. She hadn't noticed it when she came in, lost in her own storm of frustration. The envelope was plain, unmarked, a blank slate of potential news, good or bad. Curiosity, a dangerous and often irresistible force in Brooke's life, pricked at her. Perhaps Hope or Donna had dropped it off. With a hesitant hand, she picked it up. It felt heavier than it looked, weighted with more than just paper. Inside, a collection of documents lay in stark black and white. Medical reports, blood work charts, and a sealed letter. The letterhead of the first page sent a jolt of ice through her veins. Dr. Sorensen, LA Department of Oncology, Medical Center. Her heart, a frantic bird trapped in her chest, began to pound against her ribs. She fumbled with the pages, her trembling fingers smudging the cold, clinical text. And then she saw the name, a ghost from her past, a love she had once thought eternal. Dominic Nick Marone. The name was a punch to the gut, a memory she had carefully tucked away in the dusty corners of her heart. Nick. Her Nick. The rugged sea captain with a smile that could melt glaciers and eyes that held the depth of the ocean. She hadn't seen him in months, not since his brief return to Los Angeles for what he had vaguely described as unfinished business. They had reconnected then, a bittersweet rendezvous by the marina, the scent of salt and regret hanging in the air. He had looked tired, a shadow of his former self, but the twinkle in his eyes was still there, the one that had always disarmed her. But this was not unfinished business. This was a final, brutal chapter she was never meant to read. The words on the page blurred through her tears. Stage 4, inoperable, metastasized, palliative care. Each word a nail hammered into the coffin of her composure. Nick Marone, her great love, the father of her son Jack, was dying. And he had told no one. Not her, not their son. Not even Bridget, his ex-wife, and her daughter, a doctor who could have perhaps offered some comfort, some understanding. The betrayal, born of a misguided attempt at protection, was a fresh wound on top of an old scar. Without a second thought, she grabbed her car keys, her mind a whirlwind of shock and grief. The world outside her car window was a blur of neon lights and hurried lives, a stark contrast to the slow, agonizing crawl of her own reality. She had to see him. Now. Nick's beachfront property, once a symbol of his freedom and adventurous spirit, now seemed like a fortress of solitude. The setting sun cast long, somber shadows across the sand, mirroring the darkness that had descended upon Brooke's world. She knocked on the door, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The silence that answered was deafening. Nick. It's me, Brooke, she called out, her voice cracking with unshed tears. A long, agonizing moment passed before the door creaked open. There he was. Thinner than she remembered, the vibrant life in his face replaced by a pale, drawn weariness. The shadow under his eyes was deeper, his cheeks hollowed. But his eyes still held a flicker of the old Nick, a flicker of surprise, and something else, resignation. Brooke, he said, his voice a low, raspy whisper. I didn't expect to see you. She didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped inside, the medical file clutched in her hand like a damning piece of evidence. "You left this at my house," she said, her voice trembling. Nick's eyes darkened, the flicker of life extinguished by a wave of something akin to anger, or perhaps despair. "That wasn't for you," he said flatly. "Bridget was supposed to get it. I must have dropped it when I stopped by." "You're dying," she whispered, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "You were just going to disappear? Let us find out when it was too late." The walls Nick had so carefully built around himself crumbled in that moment. He, the confident sailor, the bold lover, the stubborn father, was just a man, scared and alone. He broke down, his sobs racking his frail body as he collapsed into her arms. "I don't want to go, Brooke," he whispered against her blouse, his tears staining the silk. "I'm not ready." Her own tears fell freely then, mingling with his. They clung to each other, two shipwrecks in a storm, finding a fragile anchor in their shared grief. In the weeks that followed, Brooke became his lifeline. She orchestrated visits from Bridget and Jack, carefully revealing the truth in a way that honored Nick's wishes, but also gave his loved ones the chance to say goodbye. The news of Nick's illness rippled through the intertwined families of Forrester and Marone, washing away years of rivalry and animosity. Ridge, in a surprising display of compassion, offered his support. Even Taylor, her longtime rival, reached out, her expertise in emotional coping a welcome balm in the sea of pain. Brooke was there for every appointment, every bad day, every moment Nick needed someone to steady him. There were days when he laughed, his humor a defiant spark in the face of darkness. And there were days when the pain was unbearable, a relentless tide that threatened to pull him under. Through it all, Brooke stayed. Their bond, once frayed by time and betrayal, was forged anew in the crucible of his final days, a love story born not of passion, but of profound, unselfish humanity. One night, with the gentle rhythm of the waves crashing against the shore as their soundtrack, Nick whispered, "Thank you for loving me again." Brooke leaned down, her lips brushing his forehead in a gentle kiss. "I never stopped," she whispered back. As the cancer progressed, Nick's world grew smaller. The sea he once sailed was now just a view from his window. But in his confinement, he found a strange kind of peace. He was no longer afraid of being forgotten. Brooke made sure of that. She chronicled their memories, helped Jack write letters, and read from Nick's old sea journals, his adventures a vibrant tapestry against the backdrop of his fading life. On a quiet Sunday morning, with Brooke and Jack by his side, Nick Marone passed away peacefully, the sound of the ocean his final lullaby. The grief was a suffocating wave, but Brooke knew he had died knowing he was loved, deeply, fiercely, and without condition. At his memorial, she stood before a sea of familiar faces, her voice steady yet trembling. "Nick was many things," she began, her gaze sweeping over her family, his family, their family. "A sailor, a father, a lover, a fighter. But more than anything, he was a man who lived his life on his own terms. And in the end, he allowed us to love him, just as he deserved. He was my storm and my calm after it." As she stepped down, her eyes met Ridge's. There was no jealousy, no judgment, just a quiet understanding that transcended their tumultuous history. In that moment, the past faded, and all that remained was a shared sense of loss and a strange, unexpected gratitude. The days after Nick's death passed in a hazy, slow-motion fog. Brooke found herself wrapped in a heavy blanket of grief, the silence of her house a constant reminder of his absence. Every corner held a memory of Nick, his laughter, his stories, the way he would sit on the edge of her sofa and talk about freedom as if it were something he could hold in his hands. But amidst the sorrow, a new strength began to bloom within her. Hope, her daughter, noticed it first. "You were so brave, Mom," she said one day, her words a gentle hand on Brooke's aching heart. "Most people run from death, but you ran toward it. You gave him dignity." Brooke shook her head, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "I just loved him. That's all."
But she knew it was more than that.
In helping Nick let go, she had discovered parts of herself long buried: strength, grace, even forgiveness. For the past, for Ridge, for herself. One afternoon, as she sat on her porch, the compass pendant Nick had given her nestled against her skin, Brooke smiled for the first time since his death. It wasn't a smile of sorrow, but one of gratitude. A smile that acknowledged the pain, but also the profound love that had redefined her. But the story, as it often does in the world of the bold and the beautiful, was far from over. Bridget, back at the hospital, her grief channeled into a relentless pursuit of medical knowledge, received a mysterious email from a private lab in Genoa City. Marked urgent, it contained a DNA report. Confused, she opened the attachment and her world tilted on its axis. The report revealed a staggering discrepancy in Jack's paternity. The blood markers didn't align. Jack might not be Nick's real son. The revelation sent a shockwave through Bridget. She tried to call Brooke, but her mother, lost in her memories of Nick, didn't answer. The idea, a venomous seed, began to sprout in Bridget's mind. Could the fertility clinic have made a mistake all those years ago? Could someone else be Jack's father? She knew she couldn't tell Brooke, not yet. Not until she was certain. And so, a new chapter began, shrouded in secrecy and a looming sense of dread. The world of the Forrestos and the Logans, just beginning to heal from one tragedy, was on the precipice of another. The unspoken goodbye to Nick Marone had opened a Pandora's box of secrets, a legacy of love and loss that was destined to be as turbulent as the sea he so dearly loved. The compass around Brooke's neck, a symbol of Nick's love and her guiding light, would soon be tested again as she navigated the treacherous waters of a past she thought she had left behind. The storm, it seemed, was far from over. Thanks for watching this videos. Please hit the subscribe button for more updated news.